Hello, hello. Mic check, checking the mic. Gonna switch over in 1 second. All right. Alrighty, let's get into it. Welcome to the next stream, the second stream for the Voron V0.2r1 kit by Fysetc. Again, I want to say thank you to them for sending the kit over for me to make some content about. I will eventually, after I finish all the build streams, make a review on it similar to the LDO review video and the FormBot video that I did. Very in-depth video, should go over pretty much in detail everything that you could probably ask about the kit. I'll go over the pros, the cons, and any problems I ran into, how I solved them, so on and so forth. Today I wanted to get started off with a little bit of an unboxing. So I like to spread the wealth around in terms of all of the kind of 3D printer resellers out there. So you guys know that Fabrico provided the LDO kit a little while ago. So yeah, if anybody joins in the chat, let me know how the audio is. But yeah, I picked up some stuff from KB3D and showed it off in the last stream. And today I wanted to show off some stuff I got from Matter Hackers and West 3D. So that's looking a little hot, actually. Might need to lower brightness on this guy a little bit. There we go. So yeah, I picked up a few things from West 3D and I wanted to show those off. Turn the music down a little bit more just in case once somebody is in chat, if you can let me know if you can hear the music. I want it audible ideally, but not too crazy. So just a few things. First thing, a PF tension meter. So I wanted to pick up one of these at Earth/3D Printopia, and I was volunteering, so by the time I got around to their booth when they started doing sales, these were all gone. I've made my own. I also got a hardware kit that I will probably make another one out of, or I might give it to a friend. But yeah, really glad to have one of the pre-assembled guys here. So this will come in very, very handy when we are tuning our belts. It's got a little like piano wire gauge there, and I used one for the LDO build, and it worked out fairly well. But you can take this guy off. Hey Chuggy, nice to see you. Hope you're having a good week so far. But you can take this guy off, put it across that gap. And then that gives you tune it with a screw down here, and you get it to a certain relaxed tension, and then you know it's at like 1.9, which it's approximately at. And then when you put it on your belts, it will give you a reading, and then you can tighten your belts until it achieves the tension that you want. So really quick and easy way to tune belts. You don't have to bring up a app with any sort of guitar tuner or anything like that. You can use this pretty easily. So their printed parts are really, really high quality. Everything fits together well and slides. I'm sure they probably tested this relatively well before they sent it out. So happy to have this, and we'll be using it for this build once we get to the belts. Word of warning, I will not be building this nearly as fast as Steve builds. I think him and his friend built it in about 10 or 12 hours, their Fysetc V0, but won't be building it that fast, but we'll move at our own pace and hopefully get things done. Learn a little bit, talk about the pros and cons of the kit as we go. I also picked up a couple of their specialized bearings. I've got a M4 extruder over on my bed slinger, my TiVo Tornado, and I like to go ahead and replace these, and I've got just some kind of generic AliExpress ones in there. So hopefully these will work a little bit better. Truggy, let me know what you think of the audio and if you can hear the music at all. I'd like the music to be a little bit audible, but not overbearing, just like a little polite background noise. Also in this bag, we've got a couple more of their Berserker fans. Let's see, we've got 2 of the 4010 and a 3010. The 4010 blowers and the 3010. So the idea there is we will try to probably put these in the Dragon Burner that I currently have in my Formbot V0.2. I got some sequin RGB LEDs that we will probably throw into the Dragon Burner as well. And then of course I already mentioned that hardware kit. So I'm gonna build an extra one just so I have them laying around because I'll likely misplace them. And last thing I picked up, kind of at the recommendation of, I think it was Delmar in Steve's chat. He mentioned, I was asking about some ambrosia filament that West 3D produces, and he mentioned that he liked the ABS or the ASA glass filled. So that's what this guy is. I haven't printed with any of their filament yet, so I went ahead and got the red ambrosia. And I really am liking glass filled. I've got some ABS glass filled from Polymaker / Peopoly / Soraya Tech, and I've been liking it. So yeah, just figured out I'll try a new brand, see how this prints, and probably bust out a whole bunch of pretty parts with it. Next up, got a Obsidian V6 nozzle that's going to go in the Prusa so I can print some carbon fiber on it and not have it be worn away too easily. And then a couple of the Matter Hackers build series ABS, and I get it on the spoolless refills so that I can just pop it onto a spool, save a little bit of cardboard, save a little bit on shipping, so on and so forth. And yeah, I print this a lot. Anything I need in a really basic black ABS, I tend to print on this guy. So 2 spools of that, and I think that's it for what I've picked up this week. Today we're going to get into, first of all, cleaning off and greasing the last rail. I did these 4 off stream, and I did them in kind of a new manner. I followed what Steve Builds tends to do, which is to take the carriages off the actual rails, which at first seems a little bit dangerous, but once you get used to it. But we're gonna start off by just cleaning these guys up, so let's get into it. Truggy, what do you have going on in terms of 3D printing at the moment? And if anybody else chimes in. So you got Dirty Hands. Thanks for helping troubleshooting my build on Discord. That helped a lot. No problem. I'm not quite on there as much as I have been in the past, but I try to hop in and just give any information I can. Dirty Hands, I'm trying to remember, you had the different print head, or Hotend than I did on your Formbot build. Is that right? In the Voron forum. But yeah, let me get started. I'm gonna go ahead and record on my external recorders. And yeah, so this is the last rail that I actually need to clean. And we are just going to do things the way I've typically done it. And primarily, that is to fill this guy up with some isopropyl alcohol. Honestly, these aren't all that dirty from what I found. With the other rails and anything other ones I've cleaned off, you notice pretty quickly how foggy and gritty and nasty the isopropyl gets as soon as you dip it in there for a little bit and kind of start moving stuff around. These weren't too bad. I haven't noticed very much in terms of excess grease or any nasty grime that has been in there. So I tend to kind of just turn it over a couple times, rock through it. Some people will leave them in a bag kind of overnight to really let them soak. But as I said, I haven't really noticed that these seem all that bad. So I don't think it's all that worth it to spend a whole lot of time. So far, I've noted that this seems to be the best sliding rail. They're all the same Z1 preload on this kit. In the Voron spec, only one of them needs to be a Z1 preload, but Fysetc has chosen to make all of them that way. So again, as you guys hop in, please feel free to let me know how the audio sounds. Is the mic clear? Can you hear it over the music? Can you hear the music at all? Actually, I'm gonna need that in a second. I'm going to use the EP2 grease for this build. My first FormBot build, I used the white lithium and it seemed to work fine. I think it does kind of dissipate a little bit quicker than some of the other greases, but the EP2 on the LDO has been standing up pretty well. The rails still feel pretty good on both, to be honest. But let's get this guy dried off. Luckily, isopropyl, this is 91, so it dries pretty quickly. Ideally, I would have some lintless paper towels so that I don't leave any of the paper towel lint behind. But we're just gonna run it back and forth until it feels like most of the alcohol has evaporated. So there's a few different ways that people tend to do their rails in terms of greasing them. The most common way, I think, is to go in through the back. So you lay it down, you take probably the syringe off of this guy, you put it up against it and you push it through the screw hole, and then that will fill up the entire kind of inside of the carriage, spread into the raceways and the balls, and then you move it back and forth, but it leaves a lot of excess grease pretty much everywhere. So as an alternative, what Steve likes to do is actually take the carriages off, and I'll show that in a second. And the last thing I saw Feder likes to do is you can actually take these wipers off, and depending on which guy you have, that might be easier or harder, depending on the brand of the rails. But there's two screws here and here, and if you unscrew them, they're usually just Phillips head, and you definitely don't want to lose these screws. But you can kind of pull the wiper away, and that reveals the edge of the raceway. And if you kind of dump a bit of grease on that and move it back and forth, you can actually get a fair amount of grease into the raceways without having to do the whole through the back method where you get it really dirty. And you can actually do this trick with the rails on the printer, which is a cool thing I noticed Feder do, which is pretty sweet. How is the audio, folks? So once you are done, you can just go in and screw that back down. But the alternative thing that you can do is go ahead and remove one of these stoppers. Slide it out. And what Steve likes to do is put his thumb into this gap, and as you slide it out, your thumb starts to fill the place of the rail, and it makes sure that none of the balls come out. And you got to make sure that you keep your finger flat on there. And then eventually, as you pull the rail out, this is really nerve-wracking the first time you do it, you should be able to pull your thumb away and note that there are no missing ball bearings. This does come with spare ball bearings. You know, presumably they're spec to be exactly what comes in all of these rails. Since they're all the same preload, you could use any of these. It also comes with these spare rail guides or carriage holders, so you could put this up to the side, and then as you slide it off of the rail, you slide it onto this. Yeah. You can also clean your carriages by taking them off and putting them in the isopropyl, and that can help as well. So let's see what Dirty Hand said. Sounds good. Awesome. Good to know. Can you hear the music at all? I'd like it to be in the background, but not like overpowering, if that makes sense. But we're gonna do the Steve methods for greasing these guys up. which is you can do it with the syringe or just the tip, depending on how liberal you want to be with applying it. Come on, focus. There we go. But as you can see, hopefully all of the balls are kind of exposed there. And what you can do is take your grease and just, as you squeeze it out, put along the top of the balls. You're not really trying to get it inside at all yet. Just trying to get some in that general area. I've heard some people like to heat up the grease a little bit before using it because it can be hard to get it out of the syringe at first. Working with multiple cameras and trying to get them all into focus. So then Steve generally just takes his finger. Now I'm actually going to take the syringe tip off so I can get a little bit more out. Apply a little bit more liberally. That's probably more than I need. Let's see. So just take my finger, make sure it's spread across the bulk of the balls. And you can see you're applying the grease exactly where it needs to go, which is onto the ball bearings and into the raceway. And you're not getting it all over the rail. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Hard to stay in frame. But doing it this way, like one tube of this grease will go a really long way through a lot of builds. And then the final thing we're going to do is just try to get as much into the raceway as possible. And we're going to take the syringe tip and just move the balls along. And since they have a whole bunch of excess grease on them, they will push that grease into the raceway. And if you do it in a specific kind of precise way, none of the balls should pop out. So what I found is that if I push the balls from the halfway mark and push them straight down, they'll pretty much stay in the raceway and inside of that fence, pushing the grease into the backside of that raceway, and none of them will actually pop out. And once you get a little bit of grease on them, if they do pop out, they'll kind of just stick there. I kind of don't want to do it on purpose. I might end up doing it by accident. But if you push them too far down here, the likelihood of a ball popping out, did you see that, is increased. Usually it's sticky enough that you can just pop it back in. But if you push kind of like from halfway down, and you just want to push enough times that all of the balls have traveled through the raceway, any excess grease you can kind of scoop out or dry off with the paper towel that I threw somewhere. So I mean, I like this way because it gets the grease where you want it and not like every single where else. We need to do the same with this side, push the balls through the raceway. Hopefully this is demonstrating it relatively well for you guys. Keep getting it behind the chat, I think. One popped out, but since I'm pushing slowly and it's covered in grease, it just kind of stays there. You can push it back in. If you push in the direction the balls want and need to go, you really minimize the chance of any of them coming out. Oh, and as I say that, one pops out. I see it. I can use the syringe tip to grab it, place it back in, and I think I just got a little bit too much clumped up. Oh, you guys can't see that at all. It's not in focus. All right, let's just go back to the overhead cam. So a little bit riskier than doing it from the back, but a whole lot cleaner. And I think as you do it, like, obviously Steve has done this dozens of times, but the risk is relatively low. So what method do you guys like to use to get your rails lubed? Let me know. This is one of the kind of most nerve-wracking things, I think, for me as I was building my first Voron. To get it back on, you kind of do the reverse. You want to put your finger over top of all of them, and then you'll kind of push with these fingers, push the rail back on. You just want to make sure that your finger is in the gap. Get the wiper started. And you want to slide the rail on, or the carriage onto the rail. And when you get done, hopefully you have no ball bearings there. So you can get it on there, move it around. I like to push down a little bit, pull up a little bit, push to one side, push to the other side, and just make sure it's distributed as evenly as possible. Wipe up any excess grease. And when I did the method where you put it in from the back part, I kind of did it in 3 different spots. I had to spend so much time with the syringe getting out any of the goop because I didn't want it on the screws. I wasn't sure how it was going to react with the Loctite and stuff like that. So this way just seems to work pretty well for me. It works for Steve. Hopefully I've done it close to as well as he would recommend. And yeah, I think it's between these two for which one we want to be the X. Again, all of these have the same preload, and right now I'm feeling the one I just greased up just kind of seems like it's a favorite. So then between the rest of them, you want to pick 2 that are, again, kind of the best feeling. This one over that one. Doing kind of a binary sort here. And we want to use the best remaining feeling ones. They all feel pretty similar for the Y, and then those would be the Z. Obviously, we are going to be doing a lot more motion on the X and the Y, so we want the better rails for those, and then the Z is just going up and down, so we don't have to worry about it nearly as much. But yeah, that went much quicker than the last time I did this. Of course, I did a little bit of cooking show magic and did a little bit of it off stream. But hopefully some people may have learned from that. I imagine a lot of you guys have seen this on Steve's stream multiple times. He's even faster at it than I am. But yes, the rails are greased. Went over 2-ish, 3-ish different ways to do them. I need to throw that isopropyl out or let it dry out. And we can proceed with the build. So let's go over to the manual. Pop this up for you guys. And so I've got the Voron V0 manual up, which we will be primarily following. And then I've also got the Fysetc GitHub up, which has some of their own steps. So they have an installation guide where they say go look at the manual. And then, of course, they also have some kind of supplementary things where they say, instead of doing this, Harkit uses this. So they have some videos. I know Steve mentioned that he would rather it just be in text or a manual format. I kind of agree with that, or maybe even both. But we'll just kind of try to make sure we pop in here. It looks like it's only 3 things. Use the nut adapter strips, frame component prep. You need to do something different. And they have a video. And then the X-axis has the skeletonized X-axis, and then the electronics, they have a completely different electronic setup. So yeah, that was pretty quick. I'm happy with that. We will refer over to the manual. This is my 3rd V0 build, but I'm still gonna follow the manual pretty closely. I've got all of my hardware set up. How can I do that? I have to switch it to turn off this guy. I've got all of my hardware set up in the Modbot V0 hardware sorter. So I went through and took them most of them out of the bags and put them in the appropriate spot. So I'll be able to slide that out. Then I've also got Steve's hex organizer, so we can put some stuff that we need to in there, like threaded inserts, so on and so forth. But let's go back to this guy. Identify the hardware. They talk about how to do blind joints, ball end driver, regular driver, how to cut blind joints, how to identify your extrusions. That's one thing I already did. I went through and for pretty much every set of extrusions, I labeled them so that I can quickly identify where they are. And then I took the extrusions that are going to be needed for the first 4 or 5 steps, I think, and I put them kind of up front here. So getting started. Back to the top down. So there's a few different ways that you can do this first section. The default, as is shown in the manual, is to use these printed nut strips. You put your M2 nuts inside of this, slide it into your extrusions, and then you know, it says to switch every couple steps. I can put that on there so you can kind of have a reference what I'm talking to. LDO provides these metal nut bars that are pretty convenient. You know, you don't have to print anything. You get a nice solid metal on metal connection. It does add a little bit of weight, I suppose, to the x-axis. Some people choose not to use these on the x-axis. You could always just free nut it. And then Fysetc has these, which are their PCB style rail screws. So they give you good spacing and you kind of know exactly where everything needs to go. So that's makes it so you don't have to do all this preparation. The next step is make sure the rails don't come off, and we need to find our E extrusions. So our E extrusions are which ones? They have a single hole. I think I put them towards the back. Yep, here's 1 and 2. Then in the manual, go back to the step we were on. We want to slide and put our screws up towards the top. We're going to try to orient everything as it is in there. I don't know if there's a proper way. I suppose since they have maker beam style extrusions, which have a slot in the bottom. Actually, I don't think that makes a difference. But we are going to slide 2 into each of the E extrusions. Find the access hole. We don't want to cover that up, and they're both up top there. This one down a little bit. Be interesting to see how far we get through this build. We are going to need our 2 of our rails. The E extrusions are for the Y, so we need these 2 guys. We need our rail guides. I've got 2 sets of those from previous builds. And we need M2x6 socket head screws. 2x6 sockets. And looks like we need to set our rails. So where are the holes going to end up? Towards the back. So we need to make sure that our text is oriented the right way. So these will be flipped that way. Anybody else do that? Or is it just me? I've got my Fabrico drivers, which I'm going to primarily use when I don't need any like long ratcheting action. And then I've got the LTTs for when I need some of that ratcheting action. Words are hard. So I'm gonna get one started down there. I think we're gonna have enough of these that we don't have to worry about skipping holes. I've got a bunch of spare hardware, so if we end up running out towards the end of the build, I'll try to make note that it might not be the best idea. So I'm just gonna get 2 started so that they'll kind of hold in place. And then we'll get everything aligned and measured out as per the instructions. Definitely recommend having these kind of sharp edged drivers as opposed to kind of more rounded edge ball end drivers. These really help make sure you don't end up stripping any screws. LDO sells some, but you can get similar models on AliExpress. I think Cyber's kit, one of their kits came with some hardware like this, which was kind of cool. So now we've got that on, we can put our alignment tools on. Cover up the screws that we already did. And we just need to fill everything up, and then I think in the next step we will do a measurement of 38 millimeters. And I'll show a couple different ways to do that, which is cool. But yeah, let's go ahead and just get all of these started, and then we'll tighten it up and do from the outside or from the inside out. Spread the load. I'm just kind of finger tightening these now. So far the hardware feels reasonable in terms of quality. Doesn't feel like it's going to give out. So I think we just do these Y ones, if I recall correctly, and then you just put them aside. And then you move on to the Z. If my memory serves me right from the previous 2 builds. Do that a couple times in the V0 builds where you kind of do some stuff to go forward, then you either undo it or you kind of go back a little bit. Dirty Hands, if you're still in here, how is your printer working? Did you get all of your issues sorted out with the thermistor? Was it the thermistor on that hot end that was misreporting? That should be everyone on that guy, and we'll do the same on this one. I'll keep these rail stops around until we get the printed rail stops on there. You can kind of see I've staged those because I know we need them for the first few steps. I usually start every screw by kind of backing it off a little bit, reverse, like kind of unscrewing it to get the thread started. I found especially with this smaller hardware, it can help make sure you don't cross thread and or strip anything. And Steve had 2 sets of hands in his build the other day, or these past streams. I'm a little jealous. It's amazing how he can kind of talk to chat, answer people's questions, build a printer learn stuff about the printer, teach his friend about builds, teach the whole stream about builds. What will we do without Steve Builds? Build worse printers, I suppose. Rail installation guides, mounting linear rails, MG7. And now we need to measure out our Y positioning out here. And you can do this with a pair of calipers. These metal ones with a locking mechanism are really good for that because you can turn them on. Hopefully I can turn it on. The battery's dead somehow already. I just replaced these. But let's say the battery wasn't dead. You can measure this out to 38 millimeters, lock it down, and then use this back edge of the calipers in order to be able to, you have to have enough room, but you can use them this way to make sure you've got exactly 38 millimeters measured out. Now, if you have the plastic calipers that don't lock like this, it can be a little finicky trying to keep everything locked down. So there's a printed tool that Vector 3D makes, which has come in handy for me because I've been building multiple of these printers. But he's got these guides, and they essentially act as a caliper. And if you've got a relatively accurate printer, then you can kind of count on these being exactly. But it's 38 millimeters from the inside of here to the outside of that edge. So if we put this on top, it kind of slots in, and then we can use it as a guide. And I like it because, kind of like those calipers, you can get everything kind of locked down and kind of push stuff up against each other and make sure everything's slotted in pretty well. And then once you're fairly confident that everything is locked down and at that 38 millimeters, double checking that. Oh, I forgot one screw where the carriage was. Snug it up just below finger tight. But I can use this as a guide, get everything lined up, make sure it's centered, and tighten things down relatively finger tight. And then, as Steve Builds likes to do, I generally try to go from the inside out. Another screw I forgot. Talking too much. But yeah, I like these little printed guides that Adam from Vector 3D came up with. I found them really beneficial for getting things aligned quickly and securely and not feeling like things are finically kind of moving about while you're trying to tighten things down. So this will be our Y extrusions all set up and done. We'll see if we get back to these later on. I need to loosen up. Put the guides on there, make sure we're centered. I usually like to kind of push it off the edge a little bit and then use the guide to push it back down in. Once we're in place, and so far these little PCB nut bars are holding up pretty well. In the LDO kit, they had the metal nut bars, and the first set I got actually stripped out pretty easily with just barely a scotch of kind of finger torque. But I gotta say, these are instilling more confidence. The second set of LDO nut bars I got seemed to work out better. But hopefully those are both pretty aligned well. We can remove these. I'm gonna go ahead and put our rail stops. We can't put the rail stops back on because I screwed in every screw. But I thought I saw somebody who was able to put something on the end there, but we shouldn't be moving this around enough that I'm worried that they're gonna fall out. So hopefully they'll be good. 38 millimeters for the Y positioning of the rails. We want to put in our rail stops on one side of those, the short side. So we get some amount of security. So we need M3 by 8 button head. We need M3 nuts. And we need our rail stops. So we want to go through a rail stop into the nut, thread it on just enough that it will slide in. Did I get M3 by 6 or M3 by 8 out? These are M3 by 6. I was wondering why this felt so short. Chat, you gotta help me out with that. Make sure I don't tomfoolery myself into using the wrong stuff. But once you're done with this guy, you can move it aside. It's a little bit of a unitasker. I don't know if there's some way that you can print out one that would act as all three. If you're not gonna build multiple V0s, it might not be all that beneficial to you. I'd say ideally you have some of the metal calipers. If you don't have those, a ruler or a pair of the plastic calipers would work, but I really like these for getting that portion of the build done. And then we've got our 37 millimeter and our 2033 for later. Get our M3 NX clips for 1515 on this one. How do you mean by NX clips? Huggy. NX clips for 1515 on this. Oh, do you mean the drop-in, these no-drop nuts that are here in the guide? The maker beam extrusion has a funky profile to it, and it won't accept no-drop nuts. So on the LDO and FormBot and many of the Masumi and other ones, they have kind of a D shape in that bottom portion, whereas this has kind of like a cross T. So far, I printed out a set of no-drop nuts which were supposed to work, but they were so thin, they didn't really work at all for me. So I'm not sure if that's what you meant by NX clips. Hey, don't knock it. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for hopping in. You're getting started with the frame. I greased up some of the rails off stream and greased up the last one and cleaned them out. This stream so far, the rails seem pretty good quality. They're all Z1 preload, so they're all the preload that is specified for the X, so you don't really have to differentiate them by that. I just picked which one felt the best and I've reserved it for the X-axis. Then I picked the next two, reserved it for the Y-axis. NX style, no nuts and quick on and off. Ugh. I'm blanking. I must be in dumb mode today. NX style, no nuts and quick on and off. For some reason I'm not picking up what you're putting down with that one. Not your fault. But I think now we are done with these rails. And we're going to move on to the Z rails. So these two I've set aside for the Z rails. They just didn't feel the best. The Z rails are C extrusions, and those have blind holes at the top and bottom. Then a DM with the link panel clips. Okay. Hey, what's up, Joseph? Welcome to the stream. Oh, it's a Rushmore 3D mod. Interesting. I hadn't seen these. I might have to give those a look. So in that case, if you use those, then you don't have to preload a whole bunch of nuts in a bunch of places. I tried the fizzy clips on my V0.2, but they don't get tight. Interesting. You guys keep putting me on to new stuff. It's so hard to keep up with like everything, every single mod that comes out for Voron. You kind of have to really, I don't know, have a chat of people that help you out and or look at a lot of builds. So how do you know which nuts you don't need to preload if you're going to end up using those clips? We're going to start loading up our nut bars. Wow, these even have Fysetc branding on them. I may try those too. Let me know if where are you in your build, Joe? Are you finished with it and just looking to do mods, or are you currently build? I guess if you're already doing panels, you would be pretty far along, right? So I think that's all we're gonna need. They give you these, but for the X-axis, it's this pre-tapped one, so you don't need these, but it's kind of good that they give you extra. They actually give you the extra beam for this as well. So like there's this, but there's actually the stock one if you didn't want to use this. Yours is printing, it's the LDO kit. Nice. I liked my LDO kit a lot. There's a lot of things about it, a lot of little value adds that make it, I think, a bit better than the FormBot kit. Obviously, you know, the Revo, the Voron Revo and the tool nozzles that you get, the bed, just a lot of the high quality stuff in that one. Yeah, just printed the 2.4 one for your Trident. Nice. I just finished printing 2.4 parts on. Everybody's building a 2.4. I need to build one next, I suppose. I was thinking Trident next, but we'll see. Next, we're going to take our Z rails. These are symmetric, I believe, so you don't have to worry too much about what's up and what's down. You need the 1.3. The only reason I even know about them was due to the narrow on, using them on streams. I would do Trident next. I started with the 2.4, then built a V0.2, then a Trident. Yeah, it'd be like that, right? I've printed more printer parts than I have anything else in the last 2 years. I've got Enderwire parts already printed out. I need to get to that build, but I kind of want to build the Trident next. That's the rep wrap tradition though, isn't it? printers printing printers. You guys are all old hats at this, so I don't really need to explain anything to you guys. I'm just kind of talking through stuff. A, for my own benefit, and B, if anybody happens to watch this stream. I mean, they'll probably have watched Steve's already, but I don't know. Hopefully somebody might find some of my tidbits beneficial, assuming I'm not doing everything wrong. Question, do you guys use thread locker on your rails? I've seen some people that do and some people that don't. Since these don't have any printed nut holders, I suppose I could use thread locker. Fabrico needs their Salad Fort updated kit to come back. Your wallet is waiting. That's going to be next on your list. I like watching others in their builds. Yeah, I watched probably a dozen V0 builds before I built mine. Maybe not a dozen streams, I'd say, if that makes sense. Between Steve and Nero, Modbot. Modbot's built 3, I think. 2 on stream at least. No, he's maybe built 4 by now. He did his self-source one, which I don't think was on stream. Then he built an LDO one. And then the Cyborg kit, I think. You do not use Loctite on the rails. I didn't think it's all that necessary. It's a lot of screws spread across a lot of space. They don't call it out, I don't think, in the Voron manual anywhere, but it is a metal on metal connection in this case because it's going into the PCB nuts. Your videos are a bit different in a good way. Thanks. I only use thread locker on the grub screws. Good to know. Pretty sure that's the only place they specifically call it out. And it was kind of cool that LDO's kit, their grub screws had thread locker pre-applied to them. So really there weren't that many places I needed to use thread screws. Needed to use Loctite. I do, or vibrate when Vibratight when ABS is possibly touching the screws as it passes through. Gotcha. I think once I do kind of a little bit of a tear down of one of these printers, which I plan on doing at some point, it'll be a good kind of check to see how much stuff has kind of come loose. I've done a little bit of a maintenance pass where I've kind of just gone in and torqued down as many screws as I could. I didn't notice too much in terms of the rails coming loose. I did have a rail stop that was starting to move around a little bit. This is a bit of a long process. I need to get like a good flow going for this. I think I can put away the M2s after this. Gotta say, those nut bars do come in handy. PSA, thread locker is not a seasoning. Not even on grub screw. Ba-doom-ch. Even if you think of them as narrow treats. I've got the chapstick version though. What about that? Is that for snacking? So we'll have to do the X rails and then mount to the carriage with these screws, and I think we'll have enough. In terms of these M2 socket heads. We'll see if we get down towards the end of the build stream and I've used too many of them and have to tap into my own thing. inventory. Words are hard. I've put these into every single hole so far. I want to know if that's something other people should worry about. So I'm just going to do it. Just going to send it. Get our rail alignment tools. Having 2 sets of these is kind of nice. Be able to do this at the same time. Of course, you could just do one and then the other, but I've got these left over from my 2 other builds. Lol, no. And I'm guessing we're going to need to do measurements in the next one. 33 millimeters. That is the shorter guy. They're symmetric, so it doesn't matter which side to start from. Again, these are Vector 3Ds. Jigs, I guess you would call them. And I've tightened these too much. Definitely leave these more finger tight. But I like them in terms of being able to kind of just push past the point they need to be at and then slide it right into spot, hold everything down, make sure we're centered, and start tightening up. The center out. Try to make Steve proud. Think we're good on that one? I wonder how long it would take to print a PIF kit on a V0. A PIF kit for a V0, a PIF kit for a 2.4. It'd be a lot of bed changes, I suppose. You can print everything for a 2.4 or Trident on a V0 if I'm not mistaken, right? For a V0. I mean, I've printed every subsequent V0 I've built after the Formbot kit on a V0. I wasn't really paying attention to how long it was taking. I'd say the way I did it, you know, which was with some custom colorized stuff, it was about 3x3, 10, 12 plates. I mean, a V0 can print pretty fast, you know, 250 to 300 millimeters per second. I guess each print was like between an hour and 3 hours. I don't know if you can extrapolate that. Yeah, except the skirts aren't printable on a V0. I will try to leave a link to Vector 3D's GitHub where he has these downloadable files. I don't think he has them on printables. It's kind of interesting where people choose to put stuff. Like Steve seems to want to put most of his files on like Discord or GitHub, not necessarily upload them to printables. Everybody has their kind of choice preference. There's so many platforms now, and there's all this stuff about getting gift cards and monetary rewards. All right, so these should be good. We can put the rail stops on the top, which is the longer section. Sure, this is 33. This is 33. Put them on the right side. All right. stoppers on the other end yet. Have I missed any tricks or tricks that Steve typically does, or anybody? Narrow. Oddbot has built so many of these. Mandic really. It is great that we have so many resources for builds now. You get to see how people do stuff according to the spec, differing from the spec. I feel like before Narrow started kind of streaming, it must have been kind of tough to know how to do all these, come up with efficiencies and cool things and ideas. All right, did I forget anything? 33 millimeters, rail stops at the top. M3x8, the Z. We need to grab B extrusions. Evening all from Texas. Hello, Brent Ferguson. Speaking of Texas, how do I get that up? I've got my Buc-ee's shirt on. Buc-ee's tour. I've been to 4 of the Texas Buc-ee's, 2 in Tennessee, and they're actually building one in Virginia. So I was in Fort Worth this summer. Welcome to the stream, Brent. We need these B extrusions, and we need to preload some of them. The B's don't have any holes in them, if I'm not mistaken. B for bottom, is that where they got that? You need to preload 2 M3 nuts. Oh, Buc-ee's theme printer build will be, whoa. Whoa, that could be gold. Man, what? If I do another V0, I think I'm gonna have to make it Buc-ee's themed. I'm gonna try to get a sideboard through V0, and if I do, it's gonna be, let's see, we got red, white, maybe a dash of blue. I can just base it off of this. This will be the back graphic that I have on my shirt. This is how inspiration happens. Are all of these M3 by, no, there are all sorts of different. So no M3 by 8s in this step. Buc-ee's, not buckets, stupid autocorrect. I know the feeling. We need M3 by 6 and M3 by 10. Need the M3 by 10 to go in the ends of each one of these. Okay, so this will be the first V0 I build without the no drop nuts. And we're gonna see how many nuts I lose and just drop everywhere because of that. Is this threaded? Are these not, or I assumed all of the extrusions were threaded, but they are not. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. A, B. So A and B are the same except for that some are threaded and some aren't. So A's are not threaded. That's it. This is the first kit I've seen where they haven't threaded both or all of the ends of all the extrusions. Can you see the difference there? That one is tapped, that one is not. So in places where I've kind of combined them, I'm going to need to kind of separate them at the right time. Buc-ee's printer would be so great. All right, you heard me. I already said it. If I get the sideboard V0, either through my own means or they offer to send me one. It's gonna be a Bucky's theme. I wonder if there's anybody on like the Bucky social media team who's into 3D printing. They can send me some beaver nuggets for the stream, some brisket, a little jerky. So we need 4 total in this one, right? What Hotend are you using for this build? We're gonna start out with their default Hotend, which is this TZ. I think it's the one that comes in the FormBot kit now. The old FormBot had like a V6 CHC. This has got, it's kind of V6 style. Come on. Pick up. Kind of focused. So we're gonna start out with this one. I might move to either a Revo or maybe a Rapido or something like that. Oh my god, a printer that can print in beaver nuggets. I think it's main game. I think we need 4 in this bottom one so that we can do the 2 screws as well. I have to get my tweezers out like Steve does to pass these through. And 3x6s go on the outside too, and then we have 2 inside of that. Let me know if you guys see something I'm doing obviously wrong. We need 2 preloaded, and then 2 of these on the outside, and then we'll need oh yeah, my Voron Velta came with that. Sailfish, I think it's called. Yeah, it might depend on who you get it from, what exactly they call it. It seems like, is it a Triangle Labs original thing, and then now everybody's just kind of white labeling it? At least these will kind of help hold those preloaded nuts in for a while. Need 2 more M10s. The hardware, I think it's labeled as stainless, but it is a black colored stainless. I haven't checked if they're magnetic yet. Stomach's growling a little bit. Started thinking about those beaver nuggets. Brent, I'm working on a 0.2 and I'm thinking about the PZ Probe, but it might be overkill. PZ Probe is perfect for a small build. Technically, by spec, the kind of design premise of a V0.2 is that it doesn't need bed meshing. Of course, people do it. But yeah, the PZ Probe would be interesting. Do they have a mount for that already? A PZ Probe into a mini self burner? Or would you do something like a Dragon burner with that? Hey, Feder, what's up? Emoji, welcome to the stream. Just getting started on the build. Trying not to mess anything up. Got M10s on each side. This is my 3rd V0, and I still feel like I'm probably gonna end up having to take half of it apart. No drop nuts for this one. Okay, so I thought when Feder was building this, he just chose not to do the no drop nuts. I didn't realize that there just weren't any. Oh, Chuggy sent me a message. Printables, V0 side skirt 1 piece. So I would use those, except for I don't have a printer big enough to print that 1 piece side skirt. I could print it on the Prusa, but I need to put it like in a closet or a temporary enclosure. These away, And where are we at? We've got 2 preloaded nuts here, the 2 screws that the Z rails will go on. And this one is on the bottom. And you can put these alignment tools away for quite a while. Move on to the next step. I have one already using the Revo Voron in a Dragon Burner and a Sherpa Mini CNC. This build I'm thinking PZ Probe, Dragon Burner, wristwatch extruder. If you're going kind of Gucci with it, yeah, I can see putting on a probe on it makes sense. This isn't your first V0.2. You're not trying to do like a super unique build, but mine had those PCB nut holders. This does for the rails, but I'm worried about these nuts sliding around and falling out. There are these no drop nuts that you can print out that work with other extrusion. So you can preload a M3 nut inside of it and then put it inside of the extrusion, but they don't work on this style of extrusion. My V0 with mini self burner came with the Voron Revo, so PZ Probe is simple add-on. That's my plan. I'd like to see how that works out, because you don't need a probe with a V0. The bed is supposed to be so small, but I do have like a little bit of Z offset kind of wackiness that happens every once in a while. And you can, you know, like it's your build. There's nothing saying that you shouldn't or can't put a probe on a V0, so have fun. Does that make sense though, Feder? I was, in my other 2 builds, I used those no drop nuts, and it meant that all the nuts stayed in place and I didn't have to worry about them sliding or falling out. All right, so we're gonna take the bottom one, which has the preloaded nuts. I might need more space. Number like that. Got the 2 M3 nuts there. Need to tighten this down a bit. And preload some nuts in the back. Yeah, for sure. I printed those for my Micron, but only used a few. They're handy in the spots where you're like kind of flipping it over and you still have an open end, and they might end up falling out. I saw it from 0.4 to 0.6 to 0.265 nozzles. So often the probe would be nice. That is true for Z offset. I've been switching from 0.4 to 0.6 on my LDO build, and I think that's where the Z offset is floating a little bit. I can't figure out a good way to set up Orca Slicer so that I can kind of keep all the same profiles, just swap over to a 0.6 nozzle, do a couple prints, and then swap back. That's been a real pain in the butt for me. That's your thought on it too? Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's a really good point. You're swapping nozzles at Z offset. And it has floated on me. Not tightening down. These can bite into the extrusion a little bit. We need 3 and 3 asterisks. If you need direct drive, which we're not doing, you need 5. 1. I like the count. 2. 3. I think the tweezers are the move for this. Another Steve builds top tip. Definitely a lot faster than when I was doing the no drop nuts by hand. Next up, drop it low, slide these on. There's no drop nuts in this part so far. Tighten these up just a little bit. Better. Brent had the genius idea of a Buc-ee's themed printer. And I think if I get the Cyborg kit, the Cyborg V0, that's gonna be the theme. This one, the theme is kinda based on Genji's original skin from Overwatch. But we're going Buc-ee's if I get another V0. H extrusions. This is where we start doing some of the stuff that ends up getting undone later. The whole point of these is just to align this frame. Then you undo it. Well, you already undo it if you're me and I've done it wrong. Blind holes on the outside. I'm gonna have to go get my squares in a second. Lost my cursor. There it is. Love it. Yeah, I've got the Buc-ee's World Tour shirt on at the moment. I picked it up when I was in Tennessee this past weekend. It's got all the locations, all the current locations. I think we're gonna have to do it. Build on the flat surface. So this is where we're gonna actually have to start squaring stuff up. So let me loosen these because they are not placed yet. So I picked up the Fysetc this thing, but I don't know if it's going to be all that useful or not. Let's try it out. First print will have to be a beaver nugget. Just gotta find the STL. Who needs to make a beaver nugget bench? You're somebody, Brent. So we're gonna try this out. So hopefully you guys can see that. I put it in the bottom. And you can kind of use this as a guide. They sell these on AliExpress on their website. And then hopefully it'll hold it nice and square. You're supposed to screw it in from the other side, aren't you? While we tighten everything up. I don't know if it's going to be all that help. All that much help. We're going to give it a shot. Could just end up being a little janky and more time consuming than doing it without it in the end. I'm gonna leave this one off for now. This is a little wonky. You got to go in from this side. Tighten everything up. Trying this for the first time live on stream. I haven't seen anybody use these, so it kind of makes me think like they're not all that beneficial. Why are you not threading? And there's our first nutocalypse. Loosen it, push everything into square, tighten it up. Try to get our driver out. Take it back off. If it wasn't so finicky to take it on and off, it might not be that bad. I've seen some printed versions of these. The carriages have enough stickiness. That was a risk. I could have done that. But right now they seem to have enough stickiness that they kind of hold in place. So every other build, I've used these 1, 2, 3 blocks. I've got some clamps over to the side and these squares, and they work out pretty well. I use Bessie woodworking square clamps through 2.4. Thought you were about to dump the carriages. Speed clamps 1, 2, 3 blocks. Yeah, this seems, I don't know. Maybe it's more useful for the frame of a 2.4 or something like that. This, it doesn't seem, because you're undoing stuff so much. And I already dropped, my lord. And I think you're down one screw. It hit the ground. We gave it a shot, chat. Yeah, small things makes things, small frame makes things more interesting. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. At the moment, I can't recommend them. Maybe for a salad fork or one of those other kind of more typical build where you're building out a whole frame, they could be useful. But for this part where you're kind of taking stuff apart, putting it back together, or rather putting it together, taking it apart, it doesn't seem all that useful. We tried. No one can never say that we didn't try. Am I on anything? What I've typically done is that. You guys can't see that at all. Go to, this is the primary camera. Class B0, I just made, squared up the back extrusions, mounted the Z extrusions. With the rails on it, it was a lot easier that way. Interesting. I think maybe they've written these instructions to be like, trying to make sure you can't mess them up, and it might not be the most straightforward way. typically just done this in previous builds. If you guys can see a couple of 1, 2, 3 blocks and or these. Pull everything together, tighten it up. Use this one the same way. I need to start these screws so that they're closer to where they need to end up. It's much manual turning. Good call on almost losing those rails. I definitely did. Need to think about that a little bit more. I need to rearrange the camera to make it so you guys can see a little bit easier. Interesting, this the corner of this frame isn't coming together like all that great. From that square, some spot. Doesn't seem like I should have to force this into square, if you know what I mean. Kelly was wondering for the jig that you bought for the corners, could it just slide over the top and not use the screws? You could do that. The way they kind of show the instructions, you do screw it in, but I mean, for kind of getting stuff just squared into, generally into frame, that's not, that's true. Like that's going to be pretty close to square. Let's try it for this joint and see what it turns out as. It's doing the same thing as I was doing with the two 1, 2, 3 blocks. I'm doing it from the wrong side. That's pretty good. I still think it's a little strange that this corner doesn't come together all that well. Like, what about this would cause that. Not tension in these. Well, maybe it is a little bit of tension in these. I was thinking with how cramped it is for those big 1, 2, 3 blocks I might be using. You definitely were not wrong. Can you guys see that though? What did I do possibly wrong that would make this not feel in square? Like, doesn't seem like I should have to do this to get it in square if these are cut pretty well, which I presume they are. They look very square. The cheap kit might be undercut on the extrusions. So Steve built this kit and didn't seem to have any issues with the extrusions. Feder built this kit and didn't seem to have any problems with the extrusions. So that's what's kind of making me wonder if I'm the problem. Well, I made the frame in the back first and then mounted the rail extrusion. Just made the sequence, made sense for squaring it up. You should talk to the designer of the printer about changing the instructions up a little bit. Definitely seems like that's probably a better way to do this. But they did also go through like a whole beta process. And to be clear, however far I get in this, there's a good chance I'm probably going to undo it off stream and redo it. So a little bit of rocking, so maybe I just need to go around and do all these corners again. Welcome to the stream though, Kelly. Thanks for hopping in and chatting. This is my third V0, and I can't say I've had any trouble with the frame. Just like the general finickiness of building a V0, yeah, but not with like the frame not aligning well. So, but I wouldn't write that off to some amount of user error, or I wouldn't say that it can't be any amount of user error. I mean, all of this is just a really finicky part of the build. Hello, Wild Ben. It's like maybe a half a millimeter of rocking that I kind of don't like. We are building on a slab. Agreed, but it could also be a burr on the end of an extrusion, and those two side pieces will be off a little well. Yeah. The Shrimp Father, aka Martin. Welcome to the streams. It's been a while since I've been live. I did the stream of the unboxing. Before that, it had been basically since the LDL build, which was earlier this year. That's much better. A tiny bit. These align pretty well. Hopefully I still have all the preloaded nuts back there. This is just a super weird, finicky part of this build. 58 millimeters. My Voron ruler. $58 from inside to inside would be 78 millimeters on the outside. This is where having the metal calipers that can lock would be really, really nice. Thank you, Better 15 alignment fun. Perhaps I've been lucky. Interesting. I've never had an issue with any of my frames. I'm pretty sure I'm using the right frame pieces. Better, do you recall having any like problems getting your frame in square on your build? I think I just heard that nut I lost fall to the ground. Right, well, 58 on the inside and then 78 to the outside. A jig for this would be really, really nice. I don't know, would it be worth printing out a jig just for this, a single build, if you weren't doing multiple builds? I don't, it all came together correctly. I mean, it's like a half a millimeter of like a tiny bit of lift in a corner. Almost imperceivable. We are not at 78 over here. What did I do wrong? It's 15 millimeter extrusion. Why did I do 20? Chat, you guys gotta keep me from making these kind of mistakes. 58 plus 15 is 60, 74 on the outside. Yeah. These E extrusions or H, whatever they are, they're going to come out. $74. And I just shifted it. Again, having locking calipers, really good for this step. $74 on the outside. Not quite 58 on the inside. My math isn't mathing, guys. 73. Kelly, thank you. So with a pair of locking calipers, you can take your calipers, move it out to the exact measurement that you want, lock it, and then use this outside jaw to really hold things in place. But my calipers aren't working right now, so I just changed the batteries and they are not working, and I don't really know why. I'll be right back. Swapped extruders on the magneto before a 26-hour print. Gotta check what pin I need to add to the config. $3 on the outside, 58 on the inside. Also, in my experience, you get these perfectly measured, and then when you have to do the bed part, you have to end up kind of shifting them around a little bit anyway. Battery isn't upside down. It worked. So when I put the new battery in, it worked for a little bit. All else fails, use a ruler to get the distance and just lock the calipers down. Yeah. I've had an LR44 batteries bad out of the container. It could be. I mean, some of those batteries stay on the shelf in the store for years. 58 on the inside. 33 on the outside. $8.73. gonna have to use like 6 different fingers to hold everything in place. Check these corners. That's pretty good at 90. This one has a tiny bit of rock in it. Let me make sure I'm using the same corner for the 1, 2, 3 block. Yeah. Not sure if you guys can see that. I'm gonna see if loosening and retightening this one corner might magically bring everything into square. I don't break stuff. Feels pretty good. Oh. You were able to see it on camera? I mean, there too. They're still. That perceivable to you? That would suggest all these corners are a little under 90. For some reason that one corner is over 90. Yeah, it was visible. It's much better now. But as noted, we're gonna actually end up undoing a bunch of this in a second. Putting our last one of these in. 3x8 again. You're wrapping stuff. Eventually we're going to need the Z end stop. This goes on the bottom right. Do you need a nut, Brian? Say what Wild Ben said. Just leave it to the end when you actually need it. Yeah. I'll end up re-squaring every single joint in every single corner once the frame is kind of mostly together anyway. It's easy to obsess over stuff like that, you know? All right, this is where we get into the bed, which is pretty unique for this build because it is, I need a place to put this. The CNC bed. So if we kind of scroll through these instructions, there's a lot of instructions for assembling the bed. And if you have either the Kirigami bed frame or this bed frame, you really don't, you just get to skip like 7 pages of stuff, which is really, really nice. And you just know it's going to be square and very, very solid. So we just need the screws that we use to mount this guy, and then we'll have to do the trimming. M2x8 socket heads. Let me double check and see if they note anything. Page 36, are we on page 36? No. They just say to refer to their video on page 36.
Take out the heat bed support plate.
Great seeing you stream and building again. Have a good week, everybody. Have a good one, Juggy. Truggy. Oh, I can't talk. Thanks for hanging out for a while. So it looks like we are going to do a little bit of bed prep. We need a printed part for the bed. I think is this guy. I will get my heat press plugged in underneath me and try not to burn my feet. Keep it down there until we need it. So we need to heat press insert a couple pieces. Pretty much immediately need it. It's already pretty hot, I can smell. How many things need to be pressed in this step? So this is the VLMP from Vector 3D. Rhyming accidentally. We mount our PCB with what type of a screw? Having this in like 2x time. A little tricky. I'm gonna have to sort out my build setup a little bit. M3x6 button head. We need that PCB. It's here. So it's interesting how they kind of have taken some of the Kirigami elements oh, there's a little groove. Might have to file the PCB down a tiny bit. Got some slightly rough edges from where I guess it was probably perforated. Corners a tiny bit. Maybe I was over extruding on my printed piece. There we go. And then it's got little slots for the printed piece, for the solder joints to slot into. M3x6, that said. Just screws into the printed part, I assume. There's no nut slot on the back. Back a couple seconds. Bar. Where's it at? Brent, gotta run. Been a long work day. Great stream. Look forward to seeing the Bucky build. Thanks for the recommendation. I'm gonna have to give you credit when once that starts up. So was that just into the print? I think it is. There's no space for much else. I might switch to the top-down view. Some of this, I think this side angle isn't the best for everything. Was that 8 or 6? That was 6. 6 kind of goes through, sits a little unflush for me. We need our Wago connectors. Is there anybody watching the stream that has built this kit? I think I must have been a slight bit over extruded on this. These are not wanting to slide in like super easy. Oh gosh, I need to switch back to, sorry. I put in these two guys. And I slid this guy in and screwed it in just like you did in the video. So I get these Wago connectors on. There's like a little groove. I have to file that down as well. Then I've had the extrusion multiplier, this filament dialed in all that well. There you go. Maybe I got fat Wago connectors. Maybe I'm just weak. I don't know if we need any more heat set inserts for the time being. I'm gonna unplug it. It heats up pretty quick. I do have a TS101, but I haven't. I didn't get the heat insert end tool for it yet. Side screws are these M3 by 16. Side is up. Coming from this side, here, be face down. I mean, this does really reduce the complexity of the bed build. I think possibly even compared to a Kirigami. Side screws are those. 3 by 16. Locks the T8 screw nut print. So that's the nut block, which I have somewhere. I think it's with all these, yeah. So that's this guy. Holding it with this over to that side. See, maybe having it in 2x speed isn't the best. So there's little grooves in the CNC bed. Why aren't you focusing? There's grooves that match on this guy. So presumably it's like that. And then the 3 by 16s, the screw in through the back into what I assume are already threaded holes. Okay, so that's a nice little another added benefit of having a nice chunky CNC piece that you're doing a lot of cuts on is you can just pre-thread stuff. So no threaded inserts and no nuts. Looks like there's a tiny bit of wiggle room for that. As I tighten it down, it'll self-align. That looks right to me. This is still a little wobbly. I know it's tight. Need our chain. Just need one end of it. Which piece is that? Was it the one that pulled from the outside or the inside? Need a spacer. Both ends from the drag chain. flathead. I don't know, what do you guys think of this CNC bed frame? There's obviously some specifics about it that's different than the standard V0 build, but it seems like for the most part it's helping expedite the build quite a bit. One is a rounded side and one is the square side. Install this and put the spare on the other. Oh, the rounded end. And where's that spacer? Oh, that's the tiniest little piece. This is where kind of reading ahead in the manual and pulling out the pieces that you specifically need for any given step is really beneficial, so you don't have to do this. Digging through crates. Also, having a really good idea where you put different pieces, always helpful. I think it's this piece. You have to watch out because this looks a lot like two of the pieces that will be used later, but slightly different. Here are the skirts I've gone with. We did mesh. Kind of jankily put this one together. Just printed the mesh part from another kit and cut out the part that didn't match. I might do these single piece side skirts eventually, but I don't have a printer right now that's big enough that can do ABS. So I have to put the spruce inside the enclosure again to get that done. Are we gonna need set inserts again? It just goes through the printed part. Say what size screws it was? 2x16. And which side is up? But again, these being threaded is kind of nice. This is the number of heat set inserts you got to do. Looks like you need to build a Trident or 2.4 then. I do really want to build, I think Trident's next on my list. I want to build a Trident, I want to build a 2.4. I'd love to build a Salad Fork and a Micron as well. I want to build all the printers. What printers do you have, YO? I'm not sure if you already mentioned them on stream or not. We're going to attach it to the rails. And the Wagos will go down. Let's clean up a little bit. Hopefully we don't need the files again for a little while. Threaded inserts. I'm going to put them all the way up at the rail stops. Set that down. Are these M2 or M2.5? 2x8 socket heads. Accessing these is actually pretty nice with this bed. Like this recess makes it super easy so you don't have to come at it from a wonky angle. I do think the box with this bed stuff does have some separate hardware that I might need to separately sort into the rest of these. Sort into my organizer rather. In our house we have, lost my cursor. 2 2.4s, 1 Trident, 2 V0s, 1 Micron, 1 Satellite port, 1 Preset MK2.5S, 1 MK3S, a Preset XL with 5 Toolheads. Wow. Your wife is good at keeping them busy. That's a good setup. When you have, I presume you like to build the printers and or tune them. You use them for building new printers and other projects, and then she has projects too that can make use of them. Then you don't have quite the barrier of entry for the spousal approval factor. For some people, getting their spouse to approve one printer, you know, is a tough sell. You guys have a mini print farm going. That's awesome. That's a lot of stuff that I would love to be able to build, and I hope to be able to. I really like the Preset XL. I've only seen them at conferences. But I generally have a pretty big appreciation for just everything Prusa has done. I mean, the number of people and makers he's just employing is pretty impressive. Must be pretty great if you're kind of a 3D printing enthusiast and maker, and then you can work for a company like that. I build them, she uses them, currently printing a bunch of Thanksgiving prints. Nice. Like table decorations and stuff like that. We are down to 2 of the 2 M2x8 socket head screws, but I think there's a bunch more for the bed. In these bags. But we could come to the conclusion that I should not have done every single hole. We will find out. So I've sort of lightly tightened everything up initially. And I'm definitely noticing a discrepancy here in my measurements for this rail. How did I do that? Not following instructions, obviously. That looks to be about 2 millimeters short. It's right at like 30-31, and it should be 33 if I'm not mistaken. This one looks like it's right at 33. So we're gonna correct that. So that's one thing about building printers late at night after a fairly long workday. And be somewhat prone to making silly mistakes. And I put away our print guides. Where did I put them? Our real guides. Look at the manual again. .33 millimeters. Sure enough, that was short. Maybe I just had it too tight. I couldn't slide it all the way into place. Pretty silly mistake. Why are you guys like selling prints or just kind of doing stuff for home decor and fun stuff? That's 33 millimeters. Yes, on the XL, she's printing a huge multicolored turkey. Nice. This one was pretty close, but since I messed up the one, seemed like it was possible I messed up the other one too, so. It does feel like the bed is moving along the bed pretty. The bed is moving along the rails pretty nicely. I think we're relatively square. Silly mistake. I probably made a similar mistake to that on every single build. Not that exact mistake, but that aligns a whole lot better at the top, as well as the bottom. Bed moves pretty nicely. It doesn't need to like fall under its own power or anything, but I don't think we're gonna need to do much in terms of tramming. I'm not feeling any binding. Doesn't feel too over constrained. Back to the current step. I think we're gonna do the end stop next. I mean, do I need to trim this out when it feels perfect? So maybe it could help a tiny bit, but let's say 1, 2, 3 block here. Then 3 screws and bring your bed assembly all the way to the bottom. Tighten screw number 1. I don't like doing this because you end up completely loosening this left rail or extrusion. Back up to the top. Screw number 2. Up and down. It feels about the same. It might have moved like somewhat of a partial fraction of a millimeter. When I built the FormBot kit, the frame was kind of out of spec and it ended up over constraining the Z axis, and I spent a lot of time having to fix that. So luckily we didn't have to worry about that here. We need our Z end stop, which is where probably with our electronics. They are all labeled, which is kind of nice. I noticed on Steve's stream, he noted that this should be normally open and it's soldered, I think is normally closed. No, that's the filament runout sensor. This guy should be wired so that it's normally open so that if it fails, it will allow a print to continue. But it's normally closed. Wait, it has you loosen 3 of the 4 screws? That sounds like a little wacky when you can just loosen 2 in the other rail and have them parallel. Yeah, I mean, that's the process they go through. I understand the thinking of it, of kind of having one rail and one screw being your kind of index, and then you come to the bottom, go to the top and then tighten them up in a certain order. But mine was pretty good, to be honest, from the get-go, so it felt a little unnecessary. Well, loosen either rail. Yeah, I know what you meant. Alrighty, so we're gonna go in from the back. This guy on this side, and I think we need the self-tapping screws for this one. These are like some of the only Phillips heads in the whole build. Go back to the top down for a while. Screw from the inside of the sensor. And the while stick for this to make sure I don't over torque anything and break the plastic. I do it that way. I set for my CNC router as one rail square and use that as a master. For most other rails in the system, yeah, I think that's pretty common. I assume they do it this way to kind of have it as a systematic way that people can kind of go through it. I'm not exactly sure. And then we need probably M3 by 8. These are 6. Guy barely threaded on. Well, why you no thread? Go. And then we just slide it up. Got the idlers looking. Tighten that guy down. Just can't quite see that. I'm gonna have to rearrange stuff to make it so that things are slightly more in view of the camera. And then this guy is gonna need ball head. I want to make sure we can hear it actuate. Sounds good. I still need to tighten up this frame. Bolt at the top. Crisscross pattern. These M2 nuts or screws haven't given me much trouble in terms of stripping out. Pleasantly surprised. Everything seems pretty good there. Ideally, I would have done that before doing the tramming. Probably did that a little backwards, but it'd be like that sometimes. I'm going to do one final torque down of all these screws because we're about to somewhat disassemble frame. And I want to make sure that these don't twist out of shape, because that definitely did happen in my previous builds. Heating. Now we're going to undo some of the work we just did. Oh, I'm painting your silver pants blue. What type of CNC do you have? Is it like self-designed? Like a Milo? Rat Rig has one. Then there's all the like Stepcraft and all the major brands and stuff. Poco. It was originally an open build C-frame, but heavily modded now. Okay. It was based off the open build's plans and not just using their extrusion, but like their specified build. I remember looking into the open build stuff. I've ordered a lot of individual parts from them. A lot of C-beam has been replaced with solid aluminum. Nice. Are you milling aluminum? Are you getting into steel at all? Okay, so now we gotta be very careful with placing all of these nuts. I got it stock, but over the years it's been replacing. Nice. So on the top, we need 3. Spin it around here. We need 2 M3 nuts. On the back, we need 1 M3 nut. We need to leave those alone. And on the bottom, we need 2 M3 nuts. To do this without losing any M3 nuts we have. So we have 2 up top, 1 in the back, 2 in the bottom. I think we're good. You can mill steel if you really do shallow cuts, but aluminum all day. Nice. That's kind of one reason I would like to do something like a Milo, to do some aluminum. I've got like a little Saint Smart, what is it, like 3018, 3020, whatever dimensions is, but I haven't put it together yet. I can do like wood engraving. It just fell in my other room. And if you do enough upgrades to it, I think it can do some aluminum. Preload 2 M3 nuts in the bottom. Then we have to be very careful to make sure that we don't accidentally lose any of these preloaded nuts. All right, what's next? We need extrusions for these guys. We'll go in the bottom. Our extrusions for our Y, we need to make sure we don't lose our rails. On the top, we also need to make sure that our text is facing up because reasons. I remember this being a little finicky and feeling like it was kind of just shaking and moving all around. Let's do these bottom two first. Like that kind of stuff was happening a lot the last time I built one of these. So we're just going to focus on one. Line hole aligns. I'm so worried about flipping this the wrong way and just having everything spill out. Having built with no drop nuts on the other two builds has made me kind of spoiled. It's this side. And I'm not worried about the squareness of these like at all yet. They look relatively close. I've just kind of gotten them roughly into place. Now I think all those preloaded nuts should be in a spot where they can't fall out. We're going to turn it on its side and find out. And then attempt to try and square everything up this way. Can't really do that, can you? Yeah. You have to wait until kind of the next step. And 3x10s, glad I left all of these out. So I do some DIY sim racing gear, including DIY sim racing wheels. And kind of the dream is to be able to mill my own rear enclosures for those and then kind of powder coat them at home. Every time I hear these nuts slide around, I get so nervous. Right now, I kind of use a service like PCB Way to do some of that stuff. or just have it 3D printed. But being able to do like an aluminum rear enclosure for a wheel, really nice finish would be primo. What type of projects are you using the mill for? H extrusions, those are the ones we took out before, and they have 2 on the top, 2 line holes in the bottom. Oh, I saw your message. You need to highlight it, take a look. That would be nice. I use mine to do parts for my 3D printers most of the time. Biggest thing I cut is a solid aluminum top hat for your Tron XY X5. I have a Tron XY X1. That was one of the first printer kits I did, and bought them now that you're looking at it. Okay, so I think this would be a good time to go through and square all the corners up. I think they're gonna have us preload a bunch of nuts after this. Oh, we need to adjust the side. So how are we doing? I mean, considering we don't have the front part on yet, it's not terrible. Like, that's pretty close to 37 millimeters already. Oh, you don't adjust that here. You adjust that on the side, Brian. We're gonna do it on the bottom, actually, now that I think about it. I've had that printer for years. I think it's probably the best 3D printer because of how solid it is. It's been upgraded to a duet board. Nice. And better steppers, faster speeds. That's an interesting thing. Like taking, I don't know, I would consider most of the Tron XY kind of on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of like their feature sets. And then upgrading it with some higher end stuff like a duet board. Definitely kind of speaks to the kind of DIY rep rap nature of 3D printing for a long time. I guess some people are still pretty into that. Honestly, that was so close to 37 millimeters. I shouldn't have messed with it all that much. I'm out. It's now got a better board, motors, rails on all three axes, as well as the top and bottom hats and E3D Volcano. Just don't want to upgrade it. Yeah, I mean, what would you go to? Like a Rapido 2 or something like that might give you some better or similar flow rates. Seven millimeters. I might again be going slightly overboard with the squaring this early. Still need to get a few more pieces on, and I'll probably do a fair bit of this again. If I wasn't obsessing over the tiny stuff, what would I be doing? maybe, but with but how much can I push through the volcano already? It's probably just a waste of money. At this point, take the celebrate the volcano thermal sensor. Yeah, use it until you lose it, I guess. Do what makes you happy, honestly. With 3D printing, there's so much opinionated. Some people want to get the hottest new stuff as soon as it's out. Some people want to stick with their favorite stuff that served them really, really well. And I don't think there's a right answer. I think it's just what works for you. Get seated, please. I'll be back in a little. Gotta take care of something real fast. No problem. I'll be on probably another half an hour at least. We'll go to midnight, see how far we are, if we're at a good stopping point. Midnight for me, Eastern, and then I'll reconsider. Got 37 millimeters dialed in reasonably well. The bottom plate. So I actually thought ahead and removed the nasty stuff from the bottom plate. So it's pretty much ready to go. I think we would want this to go under. Slide that guy in. We already attached. No, we need to attach the chain before we do that. I want to go back to their video and see if they have to use a spacer for this. So you got some M3 nuts. It's like just the stock setup. Spacers. Other side of our chain link or cable chain. What does the manual say? Three by 8. Couple of those. Through. Thread on the nuts and slip it in. That up out of the way. And those go. I imagine we're going to be adjusting these later. So I don't think it's crucial where this sits exactly. We actually need it higher than that because well, I don't know if we do. There's a cutout for the chain. Leave it higher for now. We can take this panel. Cutout for the chain is there. There is a difference between the V0.1, V0.0, V0.2, where that cutout goes. That is in. I have a tiny bit of wobble I don't like. It'd be hard to get these out sometimes. Next up, reloading nuts. Try to get in the same orientation. We need 4 in the bottom for the skirts. Loading nuts scares you. This is my third build. I'm still a little nervous I might forget some. Having the no drop nuts was a little bit nice. Well, it was a little bit of a luxury because at least they wouldn't slide around and accidentally fall out if you tilted it the wrong way before a certain step. Four in the bottom, 3 on the right side. Right angle. Gotta be ambidextrous. Have you built a V0, Shrimp Father? Four, 4, 3. Here I am feeling like I'm gonna distract you long enough to forget one. If I get distracted, it's my fault. No, you haven't. It's a fun build. It is a little finicky. So like right now, if I tilt this too much the wrong way, many of these nuts will fall out. We need 3 up top, 3 up top, and 3 on the side. I think just not rushing things is the way to go in terms of making sure you don't miss any. It's frustrating when you don't have it like in the right orientation to just have it slot in. I can do this way. Why aren't you going in? That's the most frustrating thing, I think. That just flew halfway across the room. I'll find that with my foot or vacuum cleaner at some point. There's a burr. There's a burr on this extrusion. And it's not letting the nuts fall in. I have a deburring tool. Not sure if it'll reach into that crevice or not. Right there. I don't know if I could have carved that up. Like wondering why I have these aligned correctly and they're not falling into place. What in the heck? That's a first. I do have files. That's not a great thing. I mean, I felt around on the extrusions looking for them. Might not have done that great of a job, but I didn't really have to worry about it in any other kits. That was just number 2. At least I'm not crazy. I was wondering why in the world I couldn't get these to go in. Throw in this one. And as Shrimp Father said, welcome back. Definitely inspect your extrusions. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 3, none on the top. Side rail. Like they all just fall into place for the most part once you get them aligned right. On that side, I was struggling to get them to do that, and I couldn't figure out why. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. A B extrusion. Tapped on both sides, and 3x10s. 4 nuts. Side of them. So definitely at first having any type of extrusion issue. Maybe that was the issue I was having with the frame kind of not lining up. It could have been like that exact extrusion that was part of the assembly before. Top, we've got 2 there. Three here. Did I miss that step? Another one down, and another one down. Another nut bites the dust. One, two, three. 1, 2. I have to flip it around in a way that won't drop every single screw. Kind of keep it tilted towards the back. That bed started moving, I almost pooped myself. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this bottom piece will have 4 as well. On the sides, got 3 on the bottom, 3 on the bottom side, none on the top. Keep everything tilted back as you're flipping that if you are doing that. Okay, are we gonna do a Nevermore anything? I think we are. So I'm gonna load up 2. That's on both of these sides. And they will annoy me and rattle around for the entire rest of the build. Might do a blower fan. Most stuff has some type of a snap-in thing, but it's nice to have a couple down there. 2 back there, 2 here, 1 back here, 3 and 3. Yep. All right, we need D extrusions. Here they are. The last 2 that are labeled. Two in the bottom, or 4 in the bottom, 2 in the top. Here we have our 4 screw nuts back down there. This guy needs to be screwed in a bit more. It's always frustrating how tightening these down kind of shifts the extrusion around a little bit. Trying to use the Steve finger method. Screwdriver bits just seem like they almost, I think it's because the extrusion slightly shifts as I'm tightening it down and pinches onto the bit because they're just a tiny bit too thick. And I put this one on in the wrong direction. Didn't matter in the bottom, did matter up top. All right, so everything should be closed off now. That's exactly what's happening. As I tighten it down, since there's torque on it, it causes the extrusion to kind of shift that way, just even like a part of a millimeter, and it just ends up pinching down on the shaft of these bits. I think Steve has some specific thinner bits he likes to use for some of this, and I can kind of see why. For like blind holes specifically. Feeling fairly square. Might have to go through each corner once, loosening and tightening. I can feel a slight little rock. And I actually think it's because of this. This extrusion is jutted out a tiny bit. Yep. Dang it. So when I did their 4-point adjustment, this ended up just sliding down a tiny bit. But luckily, I should be able to in the Z and stop just a bit, slide them up out of the way. Just that extrusion. I think we'll be okay. Actually, I don't know if we are going to be able to do that. I might have to take this front extrusion off in order to be able to do that. Oh, shucks. If we get to a stopping point and this frame is done, I'll be relatively happy with that, to be honest. Like this amount of progress. Getting the frame done in one stream. I think next we'll be starting on like the bed and the AB motion. So how can I do this? Gotta do these too. So the bottom of this extrusion is just protruding like ever so slight as much. And it's causing the whole frame to kind of rock and not be able to be squared. Yeah. Seem right. I'm gonna spend a fair bit of time off stream squaring this frame up. I can already tell. Just because I can't leave well enough alone. Just past midnight. I think once I get this reassembled up to where we were, yep, I'm gonna call it, because next will be the AB/XY motion system, and that's gonna be a bit too much to get into tonight. Tiny bit of rock that way too. We'll get it sorted. I don't want to obsess or be perturbed about it. Finger tightening these. Just to make sure it doesn't fall out when I tip things over. It's all those preloaded screws. Loose up there. Slight tilt that way. Definitely need to get that out. Can't really feel where it is at the moment. Guess it would help if I was tightening down the side I was pressing on. What do you think? A little bit helpful? Actually feeling better. Tighten those four. That actually almost got rid of almost all the. Oh, nope, spoke too soon. Almost like you have to predict how much and where the shift is going to be, and then just barely inset it from there. This thing doesn't help dangling around underneath of everything. Yeah, slight bit wobble there. I'm going to need to work out. Basically going to go around to every corner with the square and 1, 2, 3 block, loosen it, tighten it, make sure everything sits flush, isn't protruding anywhere. These feel better now. Gosh, those nuts make me nervous. Both of those are sitting flush now. I am a little bit worried about that burr that we found on the one extrusion, because if it was also present somewhere else that I didn't notice, it could be what's causing this a little bit. But yeah, I think that is going to be a decent place to call it. Not perfectly happy with this. I'm going to take a little bit of time to go through and shore that up. But I'm happy with the progress in general. The amount of work we got done. I think it took me 2 to 3 streams to get it to this point last time I did it. Some stuff is a little bit faster, some stuff was a little bit slower, but having a pretty good time building this. Thank you to everybody who tuned in on chat. We had Kelly, the Shrimp Father, in here towards the end, and everybody that showed up. Thanks to Feder for the gift. Again, Fysetc did provide this kit for the purpose of kind of making content around it. They didn't specify what I needed to build, but I'm happy to be building this. And yeah, happy to be sharing my 3D printing and building experience with you guys. Please like and subscribe. Leave any questions you have about the kit, this kit, or the FormBot kit, the LDO kit. Leave those in the comments and I will try to get to them. Hit me up on social media or Twitter or any of the Discords that you might find me on. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about anything 3D printing or technology with anybody. So thanks again to everybody who tuned in. I will be, I guess, seeing you probably next week, early next week, maybe around this time. Tuesdays might usually be a pretty good day for me, but otherwise, I will see you around the interwebs. Thanks again for tuning in. I will see you later.